My friends, we are finally here. What an incredible day it is, because today we are going to have Volume 3 announced. Victoria 3 finally making it clear what is coming in this year. And I personally couldn't be happier. The Navy, China, Russia and Japan, all of them are going to get massive revamps, a lot of narrative content, and you're going to hear about it all in this video. We're going to go over everything that we know, and if you want to purchase this, you can do it with the link in the description and the pinned comment. I get a commission, so you would be helping me out directly as well. And let me just say, this content right here is incredible. I don't think I've ever been this excited, and I think CK3 can really only beat it if they properly do trade and roads and such in the coming year as well. But this right here is a dream come true. Now for starters, I want to start at the bottom here, and this is this infographic that gives us an overview when what releases. Let's take a look at this right now, and you're going to see the details of this in just a bit. You can get the Warships bonus pack. From there you get the Great Wave expansion already on the 28th of April. That is actually pretty soon, almost just a month. It is going to be all about the Navy and all about Japan, so this is a massive game changer, at the very least, with power blocks up there. And I think that the Great Wave expansion, from what it promises, does not need to stand in the shadow of those beasts that make Victoria 3 into the great game that it is today. This right here is exciting, and it is very soon. Then in Q4 we got State and Revolution, the immersion pack for Russia, and of course in Q1 2027, so you can see that the season passes for Victoria 3 don't run from January to December, but rather from about March, April, all the way to the end of Q1, so again March. This Century of Strife is of course about China. I really like what they did there. I want to emphasize this as well. I know that there was a lot of theory crafting about the idea of maybe Britain is going to get content. I think that is a good idea, but Britain can surely be framed a lot more as the empire in general, and maybe more importantly as a European country. When there is something coming out for the balance of power being ever more important, for example, then surely that is also going to be British content. But right here, yeah, we are looking at China, which is of course under pressure by Russia, by all the other European powers. We're looking at Japan, that has a lot to do with the Navy, and simultaneously also just fundamentally with pressuring China. And then we got Russia also active in East Asia. This season pass right here strikes me as the fundamental East Asia DLC season pass, and I think that is a good thing. Pairing that with the Navy is of course also great. Man, I don't even want to imagine having to be Russia and needing to bring your fleet all the way around to Asia to fight the Japanese. That didn't go so well historically, and well, finally we can do this in-game as well. Now with that out of the way, I want to just quickly jump into the trailer. You should watch it. I will link the trailer of course as well. I really love this piece of art right here. Take a look at this. This is just gorgeous, how they shift over into a much more modern Japan that would then also start practicing imperialism as well. We can also see models right here, which I would assume are probably going to be the models that we get to play with, because man, the art department of course was always great. It should be pointed out here, and I think that this is important, there is no standalone art pack from everything that I can tell right here, which I'm not really against. I'm not really for it either. I would like seasons. Anybody got any seasons lying around? That would be amazing. But other than this, we have a consolidated form of pure content. Last year, keep in mind, Charters of Commerce was not a major expansion. It was just a bigger expansion, right? This right here will be a major expansion, surely absorbing the art budget as well. Now they say it right here, Volume 3 is all in the name of global imperialism. That is what this will be all about. Stretching, of course, your limbs, making sure that you're controlling your share of the globe, and ultimately you are doing that with the Navy. I have made a lengthy video about this where I explained what I want to see for a Navy gameplay video. That is something that I want to highlight, because you can watch this right now as well. I will link it as well, and I find it important because I have very clear expectations for what I want the system to do, and what it needs to achieve to be a good naval system. Right now it is awful. I have said this numerous times in the past. The Navy is literally just the army, but on the ocean. There's no impact, it feels floaty, it sucks, it is not an organizational channel either. I have made it clear that what I, for example, want is building ships. I want to be able to sell ships. I want to be able to have a navy that is only very effective in my region, but is very effective there, versus a navy that can actually have supremacy all over the ocean like Britain and France had it at the time. I will be a hawk-eyed fella here, so make sure that you follow the channel there, because again, I'm going to keep track of all of it, and I'm going to make sure that you know whether this system is going to bang or not. But okay, you know what? I'm so excited. Let's just talk about the Great Wave. This is the first upcoming DLC and the major expansion for Victoria 3 in 2026. focused on exploring the new oceans of expanded navy mechanics, central to which is the ship designer, offering strategic naval choice-making aplenty. Then navigating the dangerous currents of Japan during the turmoil of their late Edo period, with its political and social turmoil caused by the changing of times. So these are together here in this DLC. The Navy and Japan. I think that is very, very fair. Let's take a look at what is in this DLC. First of all, we have a ship designer. Design and construct a fleet according to your country's strategic needs. Build powerful but expensive ocean-traveling warships to influence other nations, or build an efficient fleet design to keep your coasts safe. I want to highlight something here. I think a Hoi 4 style fleet designer is not a good idea, but doing something that emphasizes what role does your fleet play, so is it something that just contains local rivals, or is it something that needs to be a global force to be reckoned with? I think that is an incredibly important distinction, because if you don't have this, then that means that you're looking at a situation where you can never oppose the big factor. So Britain, for example, if you have a very well-trained local navy, you might still crush them. I think this is very vital. We're going to see this in a screenshot as well. I don't think that this is too complex. I think this is just complex enough to essentially almost give you like a spirit of the navy. Are we a home navy? Are we a worldwide navy? What exactly do we do there? Obviously quality and such, surely, and maintenance cost also plays a role, but fundamentally we are looking at something that should be incredibly valuable, because what your navy can do is determined by the actual vessels. It is also, of course, partially doctrine, but fundamentally, you're looking at capabilities that you cannot expand any further than the vessel is capable of, because it's not like you can have, I don't know, the spirit of your combat, the spirit of your fighters, of your soldiers matter all that much as it does, for example, in land warfare, historically speaking. We're also getting flagships. Customize your very own pride of the fleet and let it lead your navy to prestigious victories. I like it. I had nothing against this. I think this is nice. They have done this, of course, in the past. This is very much like the power block statues, except in this case, I would wager the ships... Oh my god, do you think they're going to give us like ridiculous ships? It would be kind of funny if you got to customize it this way. But fundamentally, this is of course a big factor to keep your navy morale alive, to keep your prestige of course there as well. When you sink or capture one of these flagships of the enemy, yeah, that is going to have some impact. And visually, I hope that it's going to be stunning, maybe with a couple of ridiculous options. How about like a Davy Jones option? Alright, but let's carry on. Ship purchase treaties. This is what I want to read right here. Sell your ships to other countries across the globe and draw profit from your shipbuilding capabilities. I can be Britain, and I can sell ships to Argentina and Brazil, feeding both of them. The big question for me here is, because in a screenshot we see that this is done via treaties. The big question here for me is, will there be a ship market? I ask because obviously there should be prices attached to this. If it is all just bespoke values, it will be very difficult to keep track of what exactly is going on between nations. But in my opinion, way more importantly, what we're looking at here is kind of price setting. If everybody just lost their navy, it should be so expensive to actually purchase a ship anywhere, right? And I should just be able to put something on the market, basically, and whoever buys it, buys it. That would be a great concept. I would really like that. We'll see what they will do there. If it's just treaties, I feel like it might be too narrow, where it's either never worth to sell it or it's always worth selling it because it's just expensive enough. This needs to be, in my opinion, a proper market right here. It can then culminate in treaties, but still, yeah, I would love a market. Next, we have gunboat diplomacy options. Use your fleet to influence other countries in new diplomatic actions. Prussia, for example, had an expedition long before we were unified as Germany. We had no navy, there was no global kind of hegemony that Prussia could have built with that navy to begin with, and yet they went to Thailand, to Siam, of course, at the time, to China, to Japan, and they extracted very similar treaties as the other European powers did. So the idea here kind of being, yeah, it should have a big impact. In fact, even the Germans were sitting in, for example, South America, threatening civil war countries or countries that had civil wars at the time with actual gunboat diplomacy, firing at their harbors, firing at their cities, if German property wasn't kept intact, right? So this is something that should play a huge role. I'm looking forward to this. I think we're probably looking at a strategic interest rework here, where if you have a navy, you get more options, you get to do more things, and the AI can easily tell, I am threatened because they have a navy here, whereas this other person who also has an interest here doesn't have a navy here. All of this is something that should be tied to coaling sessions. I can't even stop. This navy expansion needs to make so many steps, but from what I am seeing here, the focus is exactly where it needs to be. And then, of course, in the narrative content, we get steering Japan through the social and political tumults of the late Edo period, characterized by increased challenges to Tokugawa samurai rule. Adapt to or revolt against a changing domestic and international landscape, and reform the country to see your vision through. Contend with the entry of Japan onto the world stage, and best the Western powers at their own game. Use your navy to extend the reach of Japan Japan beyond the home islands and compete for land and influence with your powerful neighbors. Pretty classic narrative stuff. We get new historical characters, we get new art, obviously Japanese building style, UI skin, map, table assets. I assume the ships are largely going to be free, or are going to be free, except for the flagship stuff, because, well, obviously the actual naval system is going to be free because it is a systemic thing. You can't really do it in a paid thing without locking features away that should be accessible to everyone. We're also getting new music, that's fine. Let's take a look at this. Take a look at the ship designer right here. I want to really focus on this. It doesn't look all too complex. You get sections from left to right. I see heavy guns in there. I believe I see propulsion. Surely I actually don't know. I think it's like range that I see there. So if I station a navy in a particular naval base, I talked about this in the video that I made, they should have a certain radius in which they are effective, and only in that radius can they act, and then you have a mission kind of where you sit down and you say, intercept anybody coming through here. This looks like it is possible. It's so hard to contain myself right now. I want to think about blockades and whatnot, and we don't know whether they're going to be in, because this is all about the DLC. This isn't about the free gameplay system that is the Navy. I want to point out here, by the way, the ship designer is a part of the DLC. That's important to keep in mind. So you don't design ships in the free update. Gunboat diplomacy also in the DLC. Interesting, that is a mechanic. It kind of feels like the expansion to spheres that we had in the Power Block DLC as well, right? Flagship, Japanese historical flavor, art, ship sails. Those are locked behind the DLC. Interesting, okay. That's a big one, really. And then new historical characters. What can I say about this major expansion? I love it. I wish it had come several years earlier, although then again, honestly, the big changes that they made in the last few years were so massive, I can't really hate them for doing them. I think they were all good. The markets, the free trade, all that stuff was amazing. The rework to building ownership, definitely something that the game needed. But this right here will make it so that building an empire will actually feel like building an empire. It should make it so that a Britain that has a global actual reach with their fleet and has enough ships to maintain that reach has a much bigger impact on local theaters somewhere in East Asia, for example, than the US, if they don't deploy their fleets this way, if they don't even have bases to deploy their fleets this way. I think that is a really big thing. I hope taking small territories, so taking small treaty ports, not necessarily for trade, but as bases, becomes more common. I think that that is a big thing that if you want to be a competitor to Britain, for example, should exist. But honestly, super exciting. I think this is perfect. I love it. They do also highlight already what is kind of coming there in the free patch with this already. I do want to say as well, it is not an exhaustive list, but let's take a look. Make navies more important for projecting global power and securing control of coasts. Okay. Turn individual ships into proper pieces of military hardware. So far, so good. Improve naval combat and make it mechanically distinct from land combat. Big one. Make declaring and holding onto diplomatic interests a more rewarding and challenging aspect of global empire building. Again, having a base, having coaling stations is incredibly important. Make generals and admirals into more meaningful and noticeable actors in countries and reduce the micromanagement of large numbers of commanders. They haven't said anything about this. I would love a military academy, but I can also see the military academy coming in once they actually work on land warfare, which is not the theme of this year. This is about global imperialism and the Navy. Make sure that supply is an important and meaningful part of the military system that can win or lose your wars. Yeah, it currently isn't. That's a big one. All of these are great, obviously. I want them to deal with this, and they are. What can I say? I think what we're getting here is really, really sweet. Again, if you want to pre-order it, feel free to do it with the link in the description. You get a Steam key, or you get Steam keys out of that as well, so it's not like it changes anything, but it just helps me out. And I can only really say, hey, unless they really shit the bed, pardon my French, this is the most excited that I've been for a Victoria 3 DLC pack for sure. Now here we got the instant unlock bonus pack. We have a ship that is for Japan, the Mikasa. We have a Borodino, this is for Russia, and we have the Dingyuan for China. This is tied to Han Manchu culture, to Japanese culture, and to Russian culture, so even if you don't play these tags, you can still actually get access to these, and long term, they won't be treated as false dreadnoughts. They will just, get a proper alignment once the actual update comes around. So this is what you get right now if you pre-order this content. Then later on, like we said, in Q4 2026, we got State and Revolution. In the first immersion pack coming in Volume 3, steer the vast Russian Empire through an age of autocracy, revolution, and rebirth. Guide the Tsar's ambitions while dealing with the legacy of their predecessors. Then confront the oncoming ghosts of the epoch-defining civil war, and impose your post-revolutionary dreams in the aftermath. So this is a really smart design. I will tell you, I have my eyes on the narrative, because I think the narrative in Victoria 3 is trying out a lot of different things, which is good. I think that is a fundamentally good thing. But regularly, they do experience misses. I think that many of the systems that they more recently introduced, like for example Spain to a certain degree, but most certainly Austria, they're finicky, right? And this finicky nature needs to be avoided. They need to generalize it a little bit. For example, the idea of the revolution, the civil war coming along, obviously it's not strictly a guaranteed thing. Now it is cool if it happened, and it should happen. Sadly, we don't really have a great war system. Man, 2027 can't come soon enough, you know that? But basically my idea here is, you need to make this really flexible. And that was my immediate thought when I saw Russia is going to be the DLC. And luckily they seem to have thought about it as well. Take a look at this. First of all, obviously we get dynamic journal entries, updates based on the Tsar power, so what do they want to achieve, what are your goals and so on. Reminiscent, it feels to me at the very least, to what they did with Metternich. Then we have deal with a flexible Russian revolution based on the Tsarist governments and the legacy of your predecessors. So I assume you can probably fully avert it. But this is probably, and I'm purely guessing here, strictly like an endgame crisis for Russia, where it is inevitable that it happens to a certain degree if you fail to reform enough out of it. If you fail to move forwards into whatever direction that you want to take. If you don't consolidate enough, you're gonna see a revolution. I really want to see this because it sounds like something that would make it so that the AI always achieves different stages. Every playthrough would be slightly different, but still, of course, be a similar playthrough. And fundamentally, it means that you're not locked in into having that revolution, even if you do amazingly well, right? We're gonna see how exactly that plays out, but I like the wording here at the very least. From there, of course, you have as a big point, fight through the Russian Civil War following the collapse of the state, build up the post-revolutionary Russia depending on its outcome, make way for a communist government, or bring about your designs for an altogether different post-revolutionary regime. I just read, actually last month, I read the 1919 book, and the way that the people that were gathered in Paris during the peace negotiation, or the beginning of the peace negotiation anyway, the way that they perceived Russia was such an interesting, simultaneously kind of completely naive and ignorant way, but also hopeful type of way, because something completely different that would have been much more in the favor of, for example, one Woodrow Wilson or a Clemenceau or even a Lloyd George, right? They were hopeful that that would still occur, that this would still take place and not go into a hardcore communist regime. So giving us options here, I think, is also a great thing, really showcases the feeling of the time. A new journal entry dealing with the pursuit of Russification, that is a big one, of course. It is a colonial empire at the end of the day, in many locations. Narrative content for Poland and other nations vying for independence. We're also getting a Ukrainian and Belarusian cultural renaissance, so that is quite nice as well. As an autocratic ruler, appoint favorites, adopt their ideological stances, and engage in narrative content around their newfound powers. I want to know, we're not getting a cabinet, are we? It sounds like cabinet light, if I see this here correctly. Maybe a cabinet is coming later. It doesn't sound like we're getting a cabinet here. Interesting. Visual effects for seasonal changes across the globe. I didn't see that. Oh my god, I didn't see that the first time I went through this. We're getting seasons. Oh, okay. Okay, wow, I did not see this. We are getting seasons. I personally, I'm a huge defender of the day and night cycle DLC. I'm always playing at night. It looks so beautiful. Getting all the seasons, that's a dream come true. I am so looking forward to this. When is this? Q4 2026. So, October, November, December. That's a long way away, but okay. I wonder whether there is a free patch in between, by the way. So, like, we get in April, Q2, we get this. Q3, a free patch, maybe an open beta. Then Q4, you get this DLC, and Q1, you get the China DLC. We are getting seasonal changes. No, I'm stoked. I'm sorry. I don't know whether CK3 can beat this. CK3 needs to give me something really juicy. EU5, I don't think they have to figure a lot of stuff out. Not too excited for any of the DLC, really. For them, I mostly hope that they figure it out, but we are way past those basic pains for Victoria 3. They are making my dreams come true. Obviously, we're also getting art and music. And then afterwards, we have Century of Strife, which is everything related to China. Shape a bright future for China by advancing wise reforms, strengthening governance, and utilizing the vast potential of the nation to resist Western encroachment and avoid the century of humiliation. So this one is really important to me, from the context that, and I've said this in the past, India and China in Victoria 3 are not real countries. What I mean there is that they are so out of bounds with what is a regular nation, what kind of population, economy, what territory and so on, that they do not play like a regular nation. They are essentially on guard mode. In India, it has slightly changed, but it is still true once you make it out of the initial narrative tract. China getting content is really important to me because it makes China playable. I know that a ton of you are playing China as is already. I know somebody who has only been playing China, but fundamentally I have to point it out, the basic game rules of this video game do not apply to China and or India. Content could change this, if it cripples you to a certain degree, if it makes it interesting. I even suggested, for example, of course, with when I did my video here on the topic of navies, that for China, and this was the fact at the time, you shouldn't even have a centralized navy. You should have navies that are tied specifically to home commands, because they literally were under provincial controls, much like it would have been in other states that were less centralized than the European states, for example. At the time, we had this in all over the place, basically, in the medieval period, in particular in the Umayyads, where you had the very first admiral title. So they created this office of admiral after coastal raids had repeatedly occurred, and that admiral mostly existed to tell all the provinces you need to have X ships so that when somebody goes into your harbor, makes landfall and tries to raid you, you can close off the harbor with those ships. So this was one of those things that was very typical, and for China that should be the case as well. To be able as China to send out a navy and go anywhere else should be after doing a lot of reforms, after fixing a lot of things. But it has to be highlighted here as well, very similar to Russia, China basically has an endgame crisis. It already does this in the base game, but very poorly. And that is the big Chinese civil war, the republic, the communist rising, the Kuomintang, and so on. And all of this will want to be played as well to make China interesting, both for when you're playing there and for when you are intervening there. Walk the tightrope of reforming China, striking the right balance between necessary change and the country's stability. Decide the fate of the imperial examination system, reforming or abolishing it to achieve your ambitions. I will be abolishing it because I find it very bad in CK3. Resist foreign encroachments and safeguard Chinese interests, such as in Korea. Didn't work out that way. Support the self-strengthening movement to reform the empire or bring about its end through revolutionary action. Foster social and economic change in post-revolutionary China. Make use of unique cabinet actions for China. Cabinet interactions. We're getting a cabinet. We're getting a cabinet! I am blind. We are getting seasons, cabinet, navy. Whoa. Whoa. Okay. This year is gonna be good. This is gonna be... Man, I am excited for this. Strengthen imperial power or seek to end dynastic rule and establish a new base of legitimacy. Engage with new... Can you see that I overlooked this and the seasons? I overlooked both of this. That is crazy. What do you think is the gameplay factor that we're getting in Russia? I would guess maybe we're getting a revolutionary rework. This already kind of sounds like we're getting a cabinet right here. Oh, that's interesting. Revolutions and cabinets would be big. It was one of the points that they had, of course. You know what, let me jump into this, actually. Right, they published this right here, so they want qualifications to be more meaningful, okay. Turn legitimacy into a more interesting mechanic where the strength of a government depends on their successes and failures, and highly legitimate governments can simply be ousted at a whim, but have to be undermined first. This clearly works very well for China and Russia. I see why they did it. I have to assume, I'm gonna be honest, we're gonna see cabinets. I think so. War exhaustion rework, wow, I forgot about this one, okay. Improve the way we simulate important historical conflicts such as the Opium Wars, so slightly, maybe what we get out of China will be slightly limited warfare. I could see that. It specifically mentions the Opium Wars, we have a China DLC, so we first get the Navy, then we get Cabinet, and then we get everything related to slightly, like, regional conflicts where I just send in a small force and we fight rather than we send 1 trillion Brits to Beijing. That would be my guess anyway. This is amazing. This is amazing. I know, recently I have been a bit more negative. Not jaded, not at all. I'm very excited for the future of grand strategy games in general, even though I think EU5 really had some afterbirth pains. They've mostly now been overcome, but still. But this right here, 10 out of 10. This is legitimately a 10 out of 10 plan. I have high expectations. They need to really work on this, because man, do I have high expectations. Strengthen imperial power, or seek to enter nested rule and establish a new base of legitimacy. Engage with new content for the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom. Experience events around the attempted opening of Korea by Western powers from Korea's perspective, so you do get Korea content here as well, although only a little. And of course we get characters and art and music. It's amazing. It's a 10 out of 10. They could butcher, of course, the actual implementation here. They could, absolutely. But no, this is amazing. I want all of it. I want it really well. Again, make sure to subscribe to this channel because I will be working through the naval stuff because I have read so many papers and books about it. I'm very eager to kind of think about whether they're doing it in a way that makes sense for history and that makes sense for planning your empire in a fun gameplay way. I'm going to leave you right here. This is my favorite Season Pass 2026 so far. We're gonna see whether there's anything else coming from CK3 that beats this, but it's not going to be easy. I'm gonna leave it right here. I'll see you later, alligator.